Welcome, everyone. I'm Neil Cavuto. The next guest says we still need another round with this president. Bernard Whitman is a Democratic pollster. Bernard, good to have you.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate being here.
You know, Bernard, when the last president tried this and last fall it was introduced, we were ripping that then. So I want you to know this is a bipartisan attack on what seems to be a sinking ship here when it comes to bank rescues. They don't work. They just don't work. So why add insult to injury?
I think President Obama is taking a completely different tack here. And the move announced today in the budget was both appropriate, prudent, and dare I say conservative. And here's why, Neil. He is setting aside a pool of money and saying if going forward the banks are in need of this money, it will be made available. He's not saying here's the money, take it, spend however you want. He's saying if we go through these stress tests, if we identify banks that are in need of shoring up, there is an allocation in the budget that money can be used for. The difference here is accountability and transparency. Back last time when we did this, I don't even think Hank Paulson knew where this money was going. In this instance, people can go to recovery.gov and follow where every dime of this money is going. This is unprecedented
let's say you can do that.
transparency.
Let's say you can do that. I mean, there's separately. I mean, to me, it reminds me of a bad horror movie sequel. If you know the first one stunk, but a lot of people ended up seeing because they were curious, and now you're going to go see another one. I'm wondering why. Because, you know, there's no guarantee that when someone says we're going to accountably look after where the money's going, it could still be going to nonsense, right? And if you have a stress test to prove whether you need the money, if you want money, aren't you going to want to look stressed to get the money?
No, I think that we're going to see a very different process here. And once we have transparency from the beginning, it puts a lot of pressure on these institutions to only take the money they need. I also think we're going to have to require...
Yeah, but you think we can kill the unaccountability? That's like when they said they could kill Jason.
Neil.
Jason kept coming back. Sequel after sequel, he kept coming back. And so, with the best of intentions... that's what I'm afraid is going on here.
Let me tell you how this can be a different movie, okay? Take the example of Chase. Chase today announced serious cost-cutting and restructuring movements. Unfortunately, it's going to cost workers their jobs, but ultimately we've got to bring these costs down among banks so that they can be productive and efficient and ultimately return to profitability. And I think as a condition of accepting this money, banks are going to have to publicly announce what their restructuring plans are and how they're going to contain costs and use this money wisely and effectively rather than just going into a pool for bonuses and corporate jets.
Bernard, it sounds good. And by the way, this is a criticism I had of the Republicans when they tried this. It sounds good on paper, but all of a sudden then everyone's going to jump ugly in the government if they start laying off tens of thousands of workers or they start getting real tight with lending to people that might be considered risky. And all of a sudden, the very things that they're trying to do to be prudent, Uncle Sam's going to jump ugly on them, and we're going to be back in this pickle all over again.
Well, I think we learned a lot from TARP 1, and that is don't give money willy-nilly without conditions, without oversight, and without accountability. And I think by saying out at the front of this budget process that we may need to make this money available, instead of sort of pulling a fast one on the taxpayers and suddenly coming back in 3 or 6 months and saying, oh, you remember that budget I submitted? I actually need another $700 billion. Obama is trying to bring a new era of transparency and accountability.
But you know what?
Here.
It goes with sequels, right? I mean, every time you think that they can't make another one because you swore Jason was killed off, right? He comes back. He's back in another one.
I think this is a fundamentally different movie, and I think it's going to be a long road, but ultimately with a more happy ending.
All right. Well, you ought to put a mask on the recovery after and just see what happens. But, Bernard, very good having you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil.